They're minimizing risks on your farm, helping you improve your yields, and increasing your profit margins. In today's farming operations, the data is the key to achieving all of this, Dave.
It's no secret that data has been helping more and more farmers gain ground in their operation, and there's no better way to manage all of that data than through John Deere's Operations Center. As a leading farm management platform, John Deere is constantly and continuously fine-tuning the features in Operations Center to make it easier, faster for you to analyze all of that farm data.
Yeah, and within that Operations Center, you can collect and analyze all of your machine, field, and crop data year after year, so you can make those data-driven decisions for your operation. You can set up field instructions for your machine operators, then push those instructions directly to that in-cab display straight from that Operations Center. Then your operators don't have to enter this information when they get to the field.
That is so cool. And with near real-time monitoring with the Operations Center, you can track the machine performance, the field work, and stay ahead of all the logistics to ensure the right work is being done at the right time. With all that yield data in Operations Center, you can analyze your total farm operations performance and make any changes for an even better next year.
And John Deere continues to make their Operations Center your go-to place to gain ground in your operation. It's free to use. Just create an account at operationscenter.deere.com or download the mobile apps from the Apple app or Google Play stores. You can also see your local John Deere dealer for more information. Thank you to John Deere for being a proud partner of the Farm4Profit podcast.
Or a point in time where we're seeing more and more autonomous operations. So we're taking decisions out of the hands of the operator. And, we're seeing technologies that have been available on the liquid side of application now come into the dry side.
Ladies and gentlemen, farmers, ranchers, and distinguished guests, thank you for listening to the Farm4Profit podcast, where we discuss the latest ideas, methods, trends, and techniques available to help your farm achieve higher levels of farm profitability. The Farm4Profit podcast is co-hosted by Tanner Winterhoff, the Iowa Bankerman, and David Whitaker, the Iowa Land Guy, where in tandem they will share their ideas and advice from industry experts. Thank you again for listening to the Farm4Profit podcast. Remember, if you aren't farming for profit, you won't be farming for long. And now, here's Tanner and David.
Welcome back to the Farm4Profit podcast. This is Tanner Winterhoff.
This is Corey Hillebo.
And we are here on a Farm4Profit episode this week. Listeners, we appreciate you enjoying our back and forth structure of a Farm for Fun show one week and a Farm4Profit show the next. So we are focusing on a profit show. Going to get to some tillage and fertilizer application discussions today, but
Dave's missing today from the podcast. He's so busy with land right now. It's crazy.
It is a great problem.
Yep. So I have to. I'm sorry that you guys have to listen to me try to fill in for Dave's shoes. So
you'll have to let us know, listeners, how that goes, and you can do that by sending emails to farm4profitllc@gmail.com. And we also thank you for leaving your reviews behind. That's kind of how we know and gauge that we're doing a good job. Our listener review today is brought to you by BW Fusion. They are combining the best-in-class products along with their 365 soil and tissue program. Corey used that last year to keep track of his crops to make sure that we can adjust and identify those limiting factors in real time to maximize your yield and ROI.
Yeah, and today's review looks like it doesn't have a name, or no, it does have a name.
It's just a long name.
Oh my gosh, the name is Amazing Podcast in parentheses Crazy Chicken Farmer. So this is from Apple Podcast. Hey guys, love the show. Found it from Off the Husk, the joint show, and have already listened to 26 episodes. Thank you for that review. And is that a little weird that you're keeping track of how many episodes you've listened to? You got like a tally up on the wall?
Either that or he's good at simple math.
Okay.
And it's just counting backwards.
Thank you for that. That's awesome.
Yes.
Hey, y'all. Today's show is brought to you by Sukup Manufacturing Company. It's the world's largest family-owned and operated manufacturer of grain bin storage, grain drying, and handling equipment, and steel buildings.
Not only are they the world's largest family-owned, they also have title to the world's largest grain bin.
Yep.
You bet. One of Sukup's assets is its long-term employees. Nearly 30% of their full-time employees have been with the company for more than 10 years. Sukup is based out of Sheffield, Iowa, and if you want more information on them, visit www.sukup.com, and we thank them for their generous sponsorship of the Farm4Profit podcast. But with no further ado, we appreciate those partners, but every spring, Corey, we try to do something around tillage or planting or getting you fired up to get yourself out in the field. So as we get ready here in the Midwest, that's our target for the show today. Last year we worked and talked a lot about high-speed planting.
Yep.
So this year we're going to do tillage and combine it with fertilizer application.
It's always something that's top of mind because it seems like there's so many different ways a person can go between high speed, low speed, deep till, no till, how you get the fertilizer on. It just seems like there's always something new coming. And, it used to be not that way. So it's fun to learn the new stuff.
Yeah. So let's jump into introducing our two guests. We have, which is kind of interesting here, it seems like two completely different spectrums of experience with Salford Group. They both have a lot of experience in the agricultural community and their jobs for their world. But we'll start off with Brad Baker. Brad Baker is the Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Product Management for Salford Group. He started as a mechanical engineering technologist in 2014, or as a technologist, and then in 2014 became their first official product manager, taking overarching views and needs in the marketplace, coordinating the engineering, production, and sales to meet the farmers' needs. Well, that's good, Corey, because that's what we're here today. We're going to try and meet some of these farmers' needs. But stepped into that role, the vice president, as a natural progression in his career path at Salford. Outside of that, he enjoys traveling with his wife and children, has a passion for high-performance machinery, which is a good reason we're here today. Also enjoys riding snowmobiles, Corey.
Ooh, I like snowmobiles.
But he told us today he's in Florida. So I'm not sure how that works. But anyway, our next guest is Dave Webster. Dave just joined Salford in a newly created role for the Director of Commercial Application. Oh, I see what we're doing here. We've got the tillage and the fertilizer application side. So Dave oversees the commercial application as the business unit within Salford. He does this with all of their product lines. But before joining Salford, had more than 25 years of experience with AGCO North America, working in a variety of different roles. So another great experience here. Outside of Salford, he has a passion for mountain biking.
That's
so
cool.
We got a snowmobiler and a mountain biker, and they're both here to help us out. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yes, and Brad did rub it in that he's in Florida right now.
That is crazy. It's not. It feels like it should be warmer right now, but we've had just kind of, 20, 30 mile an hour winds every day, cloudy, cold here, and you had to rub it in because you're sitting in Florida. I got a question going to the mountain bike thing. Are those big fat tire bikes, are those considered mountain bikes, or what are those considered?
Oh yeah, fat tire mountain bike, and I've got I have almost one of everything in the mountain bike quiver.
I tell you what, you go into a bike store, it does not take long to rack up a bill. Wow,
probably just like snowmobiling.
Yeah, snowmobiles. Yeah, that's goes without saying.
Not quite as bad, but close.
So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. For our listeners who might not know who Salford Group is, Brad, why don't we start with you and kind of let our listeners know who you are. Who's the company?
Yeah, sure, Tanner. So Salford was founded in 1978. So it's been around for a little while. We've seen the majority of its growth since the start of the 21st century. It was a small niche product manufacturer. It was originally a tillage manufacturer in southern Ontario. And they built plows and field cultivators that were suited to the heavy clay soils in that region. So the company was founded by a man by the name of Jake Rosendahl. He was an immigrant to Ontario from Holland and had a natural engineering ability. He wasn't a trained engineer, but he liked to tinker and design things. So he came out with some specialty tillage tools that suited that market. But as the company started to grow and the demand started to take off, he started to struggle with the scale of the company. So he brought in some outside investors. He brought in some more private investors, and they started to build the company up with a larger distribution network and a bigger spread across North America. And this all started in the early 2000s. And that was about this time as well that our engineering team at Salford started to enter the vertical tillage market. So Salford's main claim to fame early on in tillage is being an early entry with vertical tillage machines. We've seen other companies like Great Plains and Summers in and around the same time entering that market. We came to the market with something we called the RTS, the Residue Tillage Specialist, which was a bunch of individually mounted wavy blade coulters that provided a residue sizing action with minimal soil disturbance. And we based that on our existing field cultivator frame. And we were actually overwhelmed by the success of that product line. That product grew immensely in the North American market. And subsequently, the company started to take off from there. Now, we dabbled into some other areas as a tillage company. We dabbled in the air seeding world with some product in Western Canada. And then in 2013, we were actually purchased by private equity, and that gave us an additional pool of capital to go and make acquisitions. And it was around that time we acquired two application companies. One was based in Cornelia, Georgia, BBI Spreaders, which manufactured spinner spreaders for the ag market, and also Valmar Airflow, which is based in Ely, Manitoba, which also built fertilizer spreaders, but they used a pneumatic type fertilizer spreader and an air boom type fertilizer spreader for that same purpose. And both those types of products have popularity in different parts of North America. And I'm sure Dave will touch on that later in the interview. We also acquired Airway, which was an aeration tool company that specialized mainly in pasture aeration, pasture rejuvenation, and also in some turf areas as well. But they had developed a tool that worked in ag as well, a great soil aeration tool that also functioned as a vertical tillage tool and complemented our RTS, which is now called the I-Series line, very, very well. And so we saw an explosive amount of growth after that. And that's when the product management role came into play, where we started to bring all these technologies into our umbrella and really start to do some really neat things with them.
Nice. Corey, I think we got the right company to help us share what the latest in technology is around both tillage and fertilizer application.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm trying to think back when I first started noticing Salford on the farm. I think we rented a vertical till unit probably back in 08, 09, 10, something like that. I remember that was kind of going around the area. And I remember some friends of ours down in Southeast Iowa had one. And it looked like the same thing. So that was probably the first time that I'd ever paid attention or saw Salford in our area.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in deeper, not necessarily on the history of Salford, but on more the advancements in technology around tillage. So it'll be fun to combine the both today during this episode. But Dave, to that, you've just joined. So your early observations about Salford as a new employee, what makes it fun to work there?
What makes it fun to work here? I think it's been full of pleasant surprises. I was expected to be surprised, but came from a larger corporation. And you could say, or I describe it as a bigger ship, and it takes a pretty big oar in the water to get that ship turned, or sometimes to make something happen. It's been amazing to me to see or understand what some of the competitive advantages are of a company our size that is focused in a couple of different areas. The ability to innovate and the ability to solve problems and implement solutions has been surprising. I knew it was going to be better, but it has been surprising to say the least.
Yeah, what's some of the latest advancements in the tillage industry? What are we going to see here coming this year? What's new? Maybe let's not get to the future of it. What's new this year, or maybe the last couple years?
So we've been very active on the tillage side in the last 2 years. We've had a string of product launches starting back in 2020 that are all very exciting product launches and really point to our future as a company on where tillage is going and what we think is going to happen. So we released a whole new series of tillage tools called the Halo series starting last year. And the idea behind this Halo series is high speed in a compact package. So there was three tools released altogether, two of them in 2020, one of them in 2021. We'll start with the one model, which is the HSD, or high-speed disc. Now, a lot of listeners are going to say, well, high-speed discs have been on the market forever. And that's true. There are a lot of high-speed discs out there. There's a lot of examples that came from Europe. There's a lot of examples that were developed in North America for the specific North American market. What we did with a high-speed disc is we took our high-performance philosophy and applied it to it. And you mentioned when you introduced me, my my appreciation for high performance machinery. Well, there's a lot of engineers and designers here at Salford that have the same appreciation. And when we observed some of the products that were on the market already, we observed how they approach seedbed preparation. That was a big criteria for the design of this tool, in creating a high-speed tool that could be coupled with the modern high-speed planting technology and provide an optimal seedbed for them to run in, which is really crucial to the performance of those machines. One phenomenon that we noticed, especially in really tough soils, with a lot of these compact disc designs, was they tend to develop a resonance when they encounter tough conditions. We call it porpoising or kangarooing, so people call it hopping. You actually see the machine leave the depth engagement and crawl out of the field and then dive back in and continue to do that, just like you would see a dolphin swimming through the water or a kangaroo hopping across the ground. That's where the term comes from. Now, obviously, if you're running a high-speed planter, that's a less than desirable situation to find yourself in, because obviously it's going to affect your total seed depth consistency as you travel with the field. You're obviously not going to be able to run at that optimal speed with the planter, because it's going to ride terrible across the field with the seedbed issues that's going to create. So we spent a lot of time focusing on that, focusing on things like how we apply down pressure, the geometry of the frame, the spacing of the cultures, and how those things play together to create that situation. And we did eventually got it ironed out. So when you look at something like a race car, especially in the same series, they all look very similar, but they have very different approaches to things like aerodynamics. Well, this is the same with this tillage toolers. We've managed to dial it in and set it accordingly to avoid that situation in the field. And I think we have one of the best high-speed discs on the market when it comes to seedbed preparation. Now, the second tool that we released on the market was the Halo Airway. And this was our first combination of the airway technology that we purchased back in 2014, combined with our wavy culture technology from our I-Series machines. This is also a fantastic vertical tillage machine. We still classify it as high speed. It's not quite as high speed as the high speed disc. The aeration tines that are on the machine create some limitations in the speed that we can travel in. But it is, in relative terms, compared to a conventional tillage unit, a high speed machine, in that it can travel between 8 and 10 miles an hour. Now, these tines, these aeration tines, they enter into the ground and they twist a little bit. And what that does is that fractures the ground around it and allows more oxygen and water to penetrate that soil, with leaving minimal soil disturbance on the top layers, which is why we classify it as a vertical tillage machine similar to our I-Series. Now, when you combine that with the rolling culture, you get that residue management built in with that. So we can size the residue. So we have high volumes of something like BT corn residue on the field. We can size that and get that added benefit as well, all packaged at a high speed. Now, we follow that up with one of our new finishing tool designs that's meant to couple with the Halo, and that's our double 14-inch rolling basket combination with adjustable down pressure. That entire combination is a fantastic tool. Now, an aeration tool for agricultural use is still something that we find customers are getting their heads wrapped around. So we expect that the adoption rate is going to be relatively low at first, but it will start to climb as people start to realize the benefits of this tool. It's a very interesting tool, and we're very excited about it.
Would you consider that like aerating your yard?
It works in principle. It works very similar, very similar in that same respect. And it's just been sized and built around the agricultural application. Now, we can adjust the gang angles on that product line as well if we want a little bit more soil movement. So it can provide a little bit of soil leveling action on top of that. The gangs are manually adjustable, so we don't have an on-the-fly adjustment on those gangs, but certainly has the ability to be adjusted according to field conditions as well.
So do you attribute the wide adoption or what seems like more wide adoption to high-speed tillage, whether that's a vertical till machine or a high-speed disc, to that of the planting capacities that farmers have now, whether they're at a high-speed planter or their planter widths?
That's not the only reason. I mean, that is one of the main reasons, of course. But when we look at what's going on with the climate these days, we're seeing more and more erratic weather in the planting season. And we're seeing the windows cut short year after year and getting the crop in the ground. So it's imperative that we get that tillage operation done. We're seeing the same thing in the fall with increased volatility in the weather patterns we're seeing, with whether farmers getting rained out or froze out or snowed out because of a closing window to get things done. So getting that productivity into the product is very, very important.
I think too, Tanner, that I think things are going more narrow and faster rather than, because you can only go so big. I mean, the road is only so big. It's not like we're out, farming sections at a time, at least in our world. There is parts of the world that do that, but
and operators,
there's limitations.
Yeah, limitations to the number of operators that you have. So if you can cover more acres with one machine, whether that's speed or width or a combination of the both, you don't have to have so many people in your workforce.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was there one more Halo, or did we miss one of those?
We didn't talk about our favorite one, which is our latest release. Now, this one really is a representation of where we see tillage going, and that is the Halo VRT, the acronym VRT standing for Variable Rate Tillage. This tool is the first adjustable aggressiveness tool that's on the market that's in that compact design. So we've seen tools that are modeled after conventional discs with hydraulically adjustable gangs that can vary the angle of the blades on the fly and produce a different tillage effect on the go. What we've done is we've taken our independent coulter mount, which we're famous for, and I'll explain the benefit of the independent coulter mount in a minute. We've taken that and added it to the compact high-speed platform, the Halo platform, and we've made that entire system adjustable on the fly. And so we can actually vary the angle of attack of the coulters, the rolling coulters, on the go to change the intensity of tillage on the fly, and couple that with some various finishing systems that help optimize the effect that you get from that. So this is really pointing towards a future of almost a prescribed tillage, and I know we're going to talk about that more in a minute, but it allows the operator to apply, say, a minimum tillage operation on the fly where they just want to manage some residue, size it a little bit, maybe get a little bit of dirt thrown up top, but he may encounter some ruts, from last year's harvest that he wants to fill in, so he'll adjust that to a more aggressive angle of coulter attack and use that to level out those ruts and fill those ruts in, and then return to a more conservative angle afterwards and continue on with the intended operation. So we're pretty excited about that tool.
So listeners, when I'm looking at their website right now, when he says that compact package, if you're a mile away or a half a mile away and you're seeing a tractor pull this down the road, all three of these look very similar. They're all sitting on that two-wheel undercarriage. They fold up like a typical high-speed disc looks like. But yes, there is three very distinct differences, but it's a very compact package, Corey.
Yeah, and I've never heard the term kangarooing before.
You're stuck on that.
I am stuck on that. I feel like it was something Uppy would say.
Yes.
But when you said that, it resonated with me because we demoed a competitor's high-speed disc several years ago, and that was our first and only experience with high-speed disking, and it looked beautiful on top, but then it seemed to move the dirt away on the top, and it seemed to have like a wave effect, and it was almost harder in spots, like it was coming down and pushing down and actually causing some compaction, and we adjusted it and was able to get rid of it a little bit. But that's interesting. I'm definitely glad you guys are paying attention to that effect, because I think that's what was going on with mine.
So I grew up running a Great Plains turbo till, and there for the longest time, that's been the tillage practice that my family has used. And when you mentioned the ability to adjust when I see ruts in the field to take care of that, it immediately went to, well, yeah, I would hit those rut spots at 3 or 4 different angles to try and make them disappear, but knowing full well that I really didn't make them disappear. And if I watched the planter units go over them, you knew they were still there. So that's just one application where I can see this being able to adjust from the seat, providing a lot of value. But I can see that especially with all the technology around seed depth and seed spacing and the consistency there to try and get our emergence to all happen at the same time. That has to start with the seedbed prep.
Yeah,
Corey.
And we go to this VRT, right? So are we actually going to be making these prescriptions before we go to the field based on soil type and other factors?
That's the way we see it. Now, when you look at the scope of precision agriculture today and all the different areas where it applies right now, and it applies to nutrient application, crop protection, We're collecting and gathering information from the field, from harvest. We're performing soil samples. It almost looks insane that we're not applying the same principle to tillage, because we all know that the characteristics of soil throughout a given field are completely different in a lot of cases. The requirements are completely different, how you need to apply tillage. And when we get into looking at what the cost of tillage is, we just mentioned those field ruts. You see a farmer running into a field and he sees he has a few ruts from last year. He's going to set his tool to the most aggressive setting or bring his most aggressive tool out to the field. And he's going to do his whole field that way. And we look at the fuel he's going to burn doing that unnecessarily just to manage a few ruts. Think about the savings you get from being able to run in the manner that's most desirable, where you're just dealing with the situation you have to deal with for 90% of the field, and then able to adjust and address that issue. Look at the fuel savings that comes from that in reducing your required draft and not having to pull at a high degree of aggressiveness throughout the field. But you look at other things like soil compaction. As long as machinery is operating in a field, that you're going to have to deal with soil compaction. There's no way around that. As we come up with better and better ways to collect data off the field that shows those soil compaction zones, it seems conceivable from that point you're going to be able to prescribe tillage that will allow you to address those compaction zones with a little more aggressive approach in those areas, but then deal with your key tillage purpose throughout the rest of the field, which is to manage the residue and do a little bit to help open up and dry out the soil. So it's a natural progression in the precision ag world that we see, and we're getting ourselves prepared for it.
I could even see based on yield maps, because 250 bushel per acre corn has way more residue than 150 bushel corn that might need to be managed differently.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all a host of this. When you look at all the properties you're looking for in a soil sample, think about every trait and how tillage can play a role in managing that. Talk about the mobility of nutrients and how the as applied map looks, and how there's an opportunity maybe to balance out the distribution of nutrients in the soil. Potentially stave off offsetting the benefit of that precision application by not making those nutrients more mobile than they need to be in the soil and keeping those nutrients in place. So there's all kinds of different applications for this. And it's kind of been a last bastion in the precision ag world because it's not as obvious to people. We see it's going to get there, and it's going to start to happen fast when it starts to take off.
Who do you see making these prescriptions? Is it the farmer themselves? Is that something that you guys are going to help someone with? Is there like an independent advisor? And what kind of platform are you using to adjust that kind of stuff?
I think it's going to take a similar approach to what we're seeing with something like nutrient application, where you see somebody with an agronomic background playing an advisory role to the farmer and helping them to develop that application. They'll be taking overlays of all the data they've collected out of the field, as I mentioned, through the soil sampling, the yield data, the as applied data with nutrients, and they're going to start to come up with a tillage plan, and they're going to work on that plan together and apply it the same way as you would a nutrient plan.
And I assume, are you guys doing research on this, or is there some like universities or independent studies going on trying to prove the concept?
I think there's a number of different entities looking at it right now. I know certainly it's something we're studying in the background. Academic institutions are trying to get their heads wrapped around this. We're seeing talk of it everywhere, but we're still seeing the industry start to get itself organized into what would be the goals of something like a prescription tillage application. How would that work? How would that be applied? So we're really in the very early stages of trying to understand this as an industry.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's not where I thought we were going today. I am. I'm sitting here remembering how many times I would drive around in circles just to fill those ruts in. And I understand that there's way more impact than just doing that, but there's already an application to where if we could buy a tillage tool that had this ability to cover multiple functions, you're now creating more capacity for that tool to be used, covering over more acres, spreading that cost out over more responsibilities. But I feel bad because since we introduced Dave, he hasn't been able to say anything. So let's pause.
He's been dying to. I've seen it.
Yeah, just itching. Let's pause because we just learned about some great technology that's currently available and what's coming down the pipe on the tillage side. But we all know right now fertilizer prices are the highest that they have been, Corey, in a long time.
Since I've been alive or have seen.
And if we're talking about potentially using prescriptions on the tillage side, Dave, clearly we're going to rely on prescriptions on the fertilizer and supplemental nutrients side, just surely to save dollars and not over allocate to places we don't need to put it, right?
Oh, definitely. And I think it's, growers have been considering doing variable rate prescriptions and just haven't pulled the trigger sometimes. But, especially right now with these escalated input prices, we're seeing more and more variable rate applications take place. And, one of the things is a grower's yield goal, right? They have a yield goal and they're out fertilizing to reach that yield goal. Seeing more and more growers really start to consider a split rate application, doing a prescription split rate application, and have a yield goal that might change from when they're planting to getting into V4, V6, or a little later, and understanding the conditions and now adjusting their nutrient plan to what they see as potential.
It's ever changing, because I know when I was growing up, it used to be fertilize in the fall or the spring, and that was it. But now it seems like you said, we are in the field so many different times, and
Yep.
it affects our how we farm. It affects what we buy for machinery. We were in 20-inch rows. We went back to 30-inch rows just so because we had to be in the field so dang much. Feels like we live in the sprayer or the side dress machine. So there has to be a bunch of options, and I'm on their page right now, and you can scroll for like 3 minutes, it seems like, on all their application equipment. So it seems like you guys are set up to handle, any way to fertilize.
Yeah, and it's Brad mentioned the two acquisitions that we made here at Salford, the BBI spreaders and the Valmar, which gave us BBI spreader technology to handle everything from dry fertilizer, micronutrients, lime, and litter, to the airflow side that again, fertilizer, micronutrients, and cover crop seeding. But what seems like a pretty long list there, Corey, is actually a complete lineup for North America. You think about how different applications are from the East Coast to the West Coast, from north to south. It takes a pretty diverse line to meet all of those agronomic practices that take place across North America.
So the technology in fertilizer application, I assume, is ever evolving. Like there's basics. We've had spinners for a long time, but probably metering. I probably shouldn't even suggest. Right?
Yeah. What's coming, or what are we dealing with in fertilizer application technology?
So applying fertilizer, especially in these times with it being so expensive, and we're dealing with quality of fertilizer that it's coming from different parts of the world. We always don't get the consistent quality, even from batch to batch. You think about trying to spread fertilizer that went into a shed in January, and you get a wet spring and you're taking that fertilizer out late June. It's, it's soaking up moisture as soon as it comes out. So, there's challenges in dealing with the variability of that product. And both a spinner product and an airflow or an air boom machine can spread both of those products. But it just takes calibration. Air boom is maybe a little bit more forgiving than the spinner. And but in terms of technology, we're seeing what I would almost call enablers towards the point or a point in time where we're seeing more and more autonomous operations. So we're taking decisions out of the hands of the operator. And, we're seeing technologies that have been available on the liquid side of application now come into the dry side. They have to be adapted, different approaches, but we want to accomplish the same thing. So whether it's increasing section control, to have a finer resolution, to have that prescription map, you can have a finer resolution on that prescription map. Multiple products, variable rate on the go. The micronutrient capability, we apply a lot of customers, whether it be ag retailers or growers, are applying a granular herbicide with it. And they're using different groups. We're battling weed resistance across North America, and this gives them another tool to battle weed resistance as well with granular application.
You kind of hit a conversation that I get a lot from my customers around taking some of the control or the error out of the operator's hands, because I could probably count a lot of my growers that say they want to do an application themselves because they don't trust the co-op or the guy that they've got in the machine at the co-op to cover the whole field, whether they've been burnt in the past or it's just a rumor because somebody else has been burnt.
Right.
It's unfortunate. A lot of times you get like the intern thrown in there, or someone has to learn. You have to learn somewhere. Sometimes you get learned on all the time, and they forgot to, open a gate or shut a gate, or the spinner wasn't going, and they just dumped it on on the ground, and
right.
things
Ran out
break.
halfway.
I mean, there's human error.
Sure.
I mean, it could happen to you too if you're doing it, but you are at least probably going to get out and check and make sure you're doing a good job.
Yeah. Put the wrong density in.
Yeah.
Put the wrong boom width. In the controller, but and that's scales on a machine. We offer those on a number of our pull type machines. A little bit of a challenge for the chassis mounts, but self-calibrating versus every load that goes into a machine should be checked for density.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of times that's a shortcut, or maybe that intern didn't pick that up in the 15-minute overview.
Yep.
Of how to run the machine, and that decision is taken out of the equation.
Yep. And the ability to variable rate fertilizer and seed and anything that you're doing, I think is, if you're not doing that, I feel like you're leaving money on the table, and especially in this climate, this environment, that it's just ridiculous how much is out there. If you take a little time or hire someone to look at your operation, and you have soil samples and yield maps and all that kind of stuff, if you're not using this variable rate technology, man, you got to be feeding the areas that need it. And then I tell you what, there's areas out there that doesn't need it, and if you feed those
right
and don't allocate your fertilizer to the stuff that does,
yep,
you're hurting yourself.
Yeah, we've learned so much in our partnership with BW Fusion about how monitoring samples, whether it be soil or tissue, can really tell you where and how to write these prescriptions. And it's kind of fun to know that, we stumbled into this topic with you guys, and Salford has some solutions to fulfill those prescriptions. So that's really neat. But Corey, we've talked a lot about new, and not everybody can buy new or have the opportunity to experience new. So what do you guys know in your experience in the industry? We'll start with Brad on the tillage side. We've already got equipment on our farm. What are some tips you can give our listeners to look for this spring as they're either going through the machine before it gets in the field or after the first couple 100 acres? What are some things to watch out for?
Yeah, there's a number of things to watch out for, and we see this a lot with our products. We, to some degree, almost over-engineered our products to have a very, very long life cycle. We want this investment in our products to result in good resale value for any farmers that's looking to trade up later, but also to give longevity to the product, because it really is meant to be a robust, high-performing product. and a good long-term investment for the farmer. But like anything, these things will wear over time, and there's things that you have to check on. So for our types of tillage machines, our rolling culture machine, you want to start with those hubs that are holding those culture blades and check those for play before every season, and make sure that if you have some play, that you rebuild that hub, replace the bearings, repack it with grease, and get it ready to go before you go to the field. Now, there's a big debate in the industry right now. There's greaseless hubs and there's greasable hubs in the field, and this is an age-old debate that we find ourselves in all the time. We have a tool called our I series, our traditional tool. Every single one of the hubs in that machine is greasable, and we have customers coming to us and saying all the time, why don't you give us a greaseless hub so that we don't have to crawl under the machine and grease all those grease zerks every single season, which is what we recommend, by the way, is a once a season grease interval for those hubs. What we say to those customers is that those hubs are so over-engineered, you can run them without grease. They'll last the same amount of time as a non-rebuildable greaseless hub. Either way, you're looking at the same result. But if you grease them, it's going to carry forward that much further. Yeah. We design those things with the right amount of maintenance. You should be able to run those things just about forever and be able to get the value out of the machine. Now, in some cases, we have machines that it's simply just not optional to get in there under the machine. And some of these compact designs are restricting the ability to be able to get underneath the machine and check and grease those hubs all the time. So in those cases, you need at the very least a rebuildable hub, one that you can remove and rebuild and repack and reinstall after the fact, or simply a replaceable hub, a lower cost hub that you can put on there. In any case, you're going to want to pay attention to those hubs because those are the things that are going to take you out in the field later on. You're going to want to do the same thing with your wheel bearings, and if you have a pivoting axle as well, the bearings that are attached there. You do not want that to go down in the middle of a critical season. They're very painful to replace in the field and very hard to drag a machine out of the field if you have one of those fail. So make sure that you go through all those as well. If you have greasable joints in the frame, we recommend you do those as well. Again, you do not want to lose a bushing or have one of those folding joints in the machine go down. It's going to be very painful to make that machine mobile again once that happens. In terms of blades, you're going to want to watch for wear. We usually tell people, especially with our fluted culture blades, get down to about the 80% range, they start to lose their effect pretty dramatically after that. Of course, the flutes, as the blade wears down, the flutes get smaller and less effective in serving their purpose. And so you're going to want to change those out and get them going again. And I get questions all the time about how often you should do that. That's why we go by a percentage wear on the blade. It's too hard with all the different types of soils and levels of abrasiveness in the soils to really give an acreage amount on the wear on a culture blade. It really depends on your soil type. If you have a sandier soil, it's going to wear down much faster than if you have a really mellow soil. So it really comes down to what is that diameter, and you got to make the call when it gets down to that 80% range of whether it's still being effective or not and replace them.
Nice. So, David, on your side, we're getting ready to go spread fertilizer, whether it's air or spinner or whichever application side. What are some key things to watch out so we don't make a mistake?
Yeah, I think, number one on the list would be calibration. Make sure you're going through and doing a proper calibration. There's things that happen as a machine wears that causes you to need to adjust calibration. And as an operator running that machine all season long, you don't notice it because it happens so gradually. So, that preseason calibration is one of those things that are very important. And then there are wear items on applicators as well. Again, pull type or self-propelled. The chains, the bed chains that deliver the fertilizer, they wear over time, and you can greatly increase the life of the chain if you keep it properly tensioned. It's definitely something to watch and get adjusted properly at the start of the season. And then the other areas that are actually spreading the fertilizer, whether it be the blades on a spinner spreader, those wear out. That they don't last forever, nor does the deflector on an air boom. No different than you think about spray tip on a liquid system, they wear out over time. Just like if you're applying liquids with a soluble, those spray tips will wear out much faster. And if you're applying nothing but potash with your fertilizer applicator, that's going to be more abrasive than some of the other things you spread. And the last thing, or I guess two things I'll mention. One is the filters. If we have a system, and any system on your farm that uses hydraulic filters, many of us as OEMs are using high flow, low micron filters that have very high performance in terms of filtration, and they're protecting components that are worth thousands of dollars. Don't make the mistake of saving a few dollars that might cost you thousands of dollars down the road. And the last point is on the technology side. I've seen it way too often where a machine is equipped with technology and the grower or retailer is not using it. It didn't calibrate the technology, so it's not working right. Whether that be boom height control or issues with the auto boom shutoff, those technologies pay for themselves. You think about auto boom shutoff, especially in today's environment. So make sure the technology is working and calibrated as well as the whole machine.
That's some good stuff. I just scrolled down the page a little bit further. It kept going. And I see you have some, it looks like application equipment that can possibly go onto some of your tillage. Is that for fertilizer and cover crop or just cover crop?
I would say typically, can use both. We've got some systems that are mounting on planters as an example, either a frame mounted or pull behind that would be used for fertilizer. A lot of those too will be used for herbicide and or cover crop application. And, that's an area that we see and I think will continue to grow as the cover crop area as well. And some of that is driven by government subsidies today, driven in part by regulation as well. You mentioned, used to apply fertilizer in the fall and the spring, and that was it.
Yep.
Now we're seeing areas where that option of fall application is being taken away. All right, and cover crops, we could see those being mandated in areas or specific soil types as well.
And what better way to get cover crops out there than when you're already out there doing something else instead of having to, run another planter across it or hire an airplane or something like that. So
absolutely.
They've taken off. There's a lot of, you can't drive more than a few miles without seeing a cover crop field.
I know the carbon credit world is pushing people into areas of no-till or minimum till or to use cover crops. It's very clear the policy behind the incentives to help adjust agricultural practices to where some see fit. But I can't see, Corey, us ever going away from tillage completely.
Not completely.
Like, it just has to happen. There's a lot of reasons that we need to focus on that. But I want to go back because we've had listeners write in about this on the, maintaining existing and making sure we're in season ready to go is parts availability. We've got a lot of concerns about, like you said, we don't want, if we can do what we can to prepare before the season to avoid breakdowns, we all know they're still going to happen. So what are you guys hearing in the industry? Maybe some insider knowledge, and then how Salford approaches having parts on hand.
Yeah, it's really no secret right now. The supply chain problems out there are making it tough on manufacturers to secure all the parts they need, both for production of their product and for the service parts side of the business as well. And it seems like every time we see things starting to stabilize, another world event comes along that sends things spiraling again. So these are very unique times in terms of the number of challenges. And we've seen manufacturers take varying approaches to managing it. varying from being completely off guard and they're going to struggle as an organization to provide those parts to almost to like the hoarding mentality, like we saw with the toilet paper at the beginning of COVID, where manufacturers are just grabbing as many parts as they can and hoarding them, knowing that there could be challenges ahead. We've taken a conservative approach, but leaning more towards the aggressive side. And I'll explain that by saying our relationship with our suppliers are very, very good. We've cultivated great relationships with our suppliers over the years. We have a vested interest in their level of profitability as an organization, because we know if they're doing well, their ability to cater to us is going to be fulfilled that much easier. And so by having such a great relationship with those suppliers over the years, they are more apt to treat us well as well. And when we get into these challenging times, it's a lot easier for us to get what we need, because they're more likely to support us because we've supported them over the years. So we've had to carry a little more inventory than we normally would. I wouldn't classify it as hoarding. There's some inevitable issues out there. We all know the microprocessor shortage with electronics. There's some issues with hydraulic components out there, tires, things like that. But I think overall as a company, we've managed it very, very well. And we're confident we can provide the level of part support in the field this year that would be required any other year.
You're still drawing out of your storage locker for toilet paper, aren't you, Tanner?
Wait, no, I put a mill in the basement. I'm milling it out, cut my own trees down.
Okay.
That's pretty good. Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to learn more about Salford Group and the products that you offer. But I'm curious, both of you have been in the industry for a long time, and I'm sure both of you have identified some of your either favorite producers to work with or those that are giving you great feedback. But I want to know what those top tier farmers from your observation are doing. So Dave, I'm going to put you on the spot first. What are your top tier clients or partners doing that sticks out?
Well, I think about some of the top growers, customers that I've worked with, been exposed to over the years, they're always trying something new, right? They're always looking for a better way, pushing the envelope. What might start out as a small plot size trial, then turns into a field trial, turns into a complete farm approach sometimes. But it's always, that's what I see them doing, is trying something new, a different approach. And they're always educating themselves. And some of that takes place off farm or away from the business, but a lot of it, the top ones are doing it in their own operation, doing those experiments.
I would echo that. Certainly, as a company, we've worked with more progressive producers, and that's where a lot of our product ideas come from, is by partnering with those producers. And like Dave said, they're always willing to adjust their approach. They're not set in their ways. They understand that there are so many moving parts in crop production. And there's rarely a time where everything lines up the same. It's the same set of conditions that you're dealing with. And they recognize that, and they know they have to try different approaches to different circumstances. And so they'll come to us with ideas, for lining our equipment up with different row spacings, or trying to take tillage down to a once a year kind of practice, or things like that. And they'll really work with us to try to understand what are some things we could try to make this work. And they're not always successful, but some really good ideas come out of that. And they're willing to share some of the risk with us. If we'll put a new product out there, we'll let them have first dibs on it and try it out, and we'll learn together. And that's how some of our best ideas come together as a corporation.
Great. We always ask our guests the same question. We'll ask both of you. So I'll ask the question, and then I'll do the summary.
Oh, look at this. I'm getting spoiled.
And you can do the challenge, Tanner, while you guys think of the answer. What do you know now that you wish you would have known sooner? So while you guys think of that, I will try to summarize here. I'm probably not as good as Dave at this.
Dave's the challenge guy.
Is he the challenge guy?
I'm the summary guy.
Well, I wrote everything down here that I found interesting, or tried to come. So today we talked to Brad Baker and David Webster at Salford. Was founded in 1978 in Ontario. It started with plows, but they're best probably known for their vertical tillage. In 2013, they had private equity come in and acquired some application equipment. We talked about the Halo series of speed discs and the different things that happen there, and we learned a new term called kangarooing. Hopping.
You're not going to
I wrote that down. I wrote that down. So we have some pretty cool technology there that is already in place, and I'm sure that's coming. And then also variable rate technology, which I've never heard of in tillage before, and now it makes complete sense that I've heard it. Talked to David about application equipment. It's made. They have a list on their website that you can just keep scrolling, and it's just a ton of them. But it's. He said it perfectly when he said it's made for all of North America and all the different kinds of fertilizers and all the different kinds of application that we do. Everything from variable rate to cover crops and granular herbicide. We talked maintenance. If you don't have the ability to buy new, which you only buy new and then you always have to maintain it. So we got to check hubs preseason, make sure we replace those if there's any play. Watch all of our bearings and any movable points on those things. I learned something today about greaseless hubs because I would have probably had the same thing that Brad said other farmers have is, why is this not greaseless? Well, they have grease hubs, but the greaseless or the greased hubs will last just as long as the greaseless hubs without grease, and they'll only last longer if you do grease them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so if you're the employee, turn the radio off. Yes, you still have to grease them.
Yes. So that was pretty cool. Blades, once they get to 80% and under, they start wearing pretty fast. Got to be cognizant of what kind of soil you're in. Sandy soil, you're going to wear out blades and wearable parts faster. Spend a few dollars and probably save thousands in maintenance. Make sure to calibrate not just your applications, but also your technology, your auto booms and that kind of stuff, because that stuff pays you back. Parts are available. They've taken a conservative approach, but not quite hoarding. And top clients are always trying new things, even if on a small scale. So always trying to better themselves.
Yes, absolutely. I think you did a good job.
Thank you.
That's a good job. My summary, my challenge, I'm going to challenge everybody to go run a marathon.
Okay.
Just off the wall. No,
You're done challenging people.
Yeah, on a serious note, my challenge is we're putting a focus on tillage again this year. We did this last spring. We're going to do it again this spring. My challenge is to set yourself up with the best seed bed that you have ever prepared ahead of your planter. I want to challenge you to make that a focus of yours. I don't want to see you cutting corners. I don't want to hear that you cut corners. I want you to have changed the sweeps that you needed to change. Have upgraded your hubs. Make sure that there's no play. Make sure that your colders have been replaced if they're down to the wear points. And try to avoid going in adverse conditions. I know Brad said it. Our windows are getting smaller and smaller, but that's my challenge, is let's make the best seed bed for our planters to go across this year.
Yep. And with that, we'll get back to our question. What do you know now that you wish you would have known sooner? Either one of you can start.
I wish I would have known the Rams were going to win the Super Bowl to start off with. But something I wish I would have known earlier, and I think people will find this interesting, is the impact that applying with GPS guidance has on nutrient availability. And what I have been starting to see the last couple years is fields that have P and or K deficiency as a result of being applied on the same guidance lines for 4, 5, or 6 years. So the nutrients that are not mobile, if we're not very careful on ensuring that we have the machine calibrated, we have the spread pattern correct, we can actually create low mobility nutrient deficiencies in the soil. So yeah, so something interesting. I was surprised when I started to see this.
No, that was a good one. Brad, what about you?
I'd say I've been surprised throughout my career just how adoptive to new concepts today's farmers are. Coming into this, I come from a farm background. I have family that farmed. I grew up around machinery. But when you look at the practices coming through 70s, 80s, 90s, You didn't see a whole lot of progression. You saw some. You saw the emergence of no-till and things like that, but you didn't get the sense that there was a lot going on there. But as I've worked with producers in this industry and really understood the fact that they're one of the best people that are conditioned to manage risk and know and understand risk, and that leads to their level of adoption, the willingness to take on that challenge and really understand it and try to make it work. And had I got my head wrapped around that a lot earlier on, I think there'd been a lot more we could have done a lot earlier to push the industry along. Hindsight's 2020. We're moving along now, so I'm happy to see it. But it's one of those things you always look back and wish I would have had that revelation sooner and recognized that sooner. So.
No, that's great. Gentlemen, it's been our pleasure to get to meet you and learn more about Salford. Or is it Salford?
I think I call it Salford.
Salford.
I think they said Salford, right?
It's the dialect. We say Salford in Ontario. I've heard Salford several times in a lot of areas.
Yeah,
you say it how you like.
Yeah,
that was a nice way. That was a nice way of him telling me I was wrong.
I'd also say go to salfordgroup.com. I was just searching around here and go to the dealer search, and you can find the dealers that are closest to you. I've got one that's 30 miles away. I didn't even know was a dealer, because if you don't have one, you got to know where you can buy one, and maybe they got some demos running around or something, and you can get it on your farm. That'd be kind of cool.
Yes, and listeners, stick around. We had this episode planned. We wanted to find experts to give us the input on this and stumbled into a really cool partnership. So hang around. Salford has an exclusive prize for Farm4Profit listeners. So you go to salfordgroup.com/farm4profit, and that is where you can find the link to register, or on social media. If you look, we will tag them in, but you have the chance to win an Orion custom Salford cooler prize package, which is perfect as the spring starts to heat up. You can look cool, keeping your beers cool while you feel your best and farm your best. So
Is
it's
that like one of those
salfordgroup.com/farm4profit.
Is that like a Yeti or like?
Yeah,
okay,
it's better than a Yeti.
Better than Yeti. Okay,
Absolutely.
Okay.
So thanks again, gentlemen. We appreciate that. Listeners, don't forget to tell your friends, family, and leave us reviews behind. Also, if you want to leave us a voicemail, 515-207-9640. It's out on the website. If I said that too fast.
Is that a first?
Yes.
We have a voicemail now?
We've got a voicemail. It'll make sense. I promise.
Okay.
But yes, gentlemen, thank you. We appreciate it a lot.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And listeners, until next time, have a good one.
Remember, if you aren't farming for profit, you won't be farming for long.